Hi, this is Corey Brock, and this is my EDL 854 case study, the budget debacle. Summarize the case. Briardale Elementary is one of 6 elementary schools. I'm Carlos Santos. I'm the Briardale principal. The superintendent, who's in charge of placing funds to support the basic education and curriculum. The funding for the supplemental curriculum has to be fundraised to support. The supplemental funding foundations are set up and ran by parents. Funds raised are handed over to the principals, which in turn fund the supplemental programs, which is recommended by the foundation. Usually art, music, foreign language is supported entirely by the foundation. Mr. Barely, who is new to the school community, he is now this year's foundation president, and he's a Harvard graduate. Mr. Barely was a fraternity brother with another school's foundation president, Mr. Morley. Mr. Barely, because of this, was highly motivated to raise the most money. He decided to use a fundraising strategy that he used during college. It was selling raffle tickets for a chance to win cash. He proposed the strategy to the foundation. They were all in favor. Tickets were sold, and the night of the drawing, the sheriff showed up and arrested Mr. Barely. Someone tipped the sheriff about the drawing for cash raffle. Mr. Barely was convicted of a misdemeanor and placed on probation. I was embarrassed. It became front page news and the talk of the town. Mr. Barely planned a raffle for cash event. The foundation approved the idea, but Mr. Barely was arrested for hosting this event. Mr. Barely did not ask me or the school if there was any state or county laws against a raffle for cash events. If I was asked, I did not know any laws existed. When holding a raffle for cash event, you need to check with your state to make sure that they are okay to have. Many states have laws or regulations in place against schools hosting these type of events. This is why it's difficult to have parents run the foundation or have a new parent each year. The fundraising has turned into a competition to raise the most money. And I don't think that's probably the best way to handle things. Mr. Barely was highly motivated to raise the most money for the Briardale Foundation that he held an illegal raffle for cash event, which was turned in by someone to the sheriff. Mr. Santo, myself, I'm the Briardale principal. Mr. Barely, he's the foundation's new president. The foundation members, the superintendent, Mr. Morley, he is the foundation of another elementary. The anonymous tipster, we don't know who that is. Sheriff, the media outlets, and the community. Briardale is one of 6 elementaries. There's also 2 middle schools and 1 high school. Briardale is the center of the town. It is used to host community events up to 1,000 audience members, and it's a diverse community. Programs. The district funds the curriculum programs, and the curriculum focuses on basic skills and educational objectives. Spelling bees. We host spelling bees at our school. We have to fundraise supplemental programs such as art, foreign language, and it has a winning football tradition. This situation can be extremely damaging to all the stakeholders and community. First, we can lose the trust of everyone that has helped raise funds for our foundation. It may cause an audit of our foundation, of our school and maybe other schools, and what we have done in the past. And have we done it properly in the past? Is it appropriate to have parents run the foundation? Mr. Barely, Briardale, and myself have an important stake in the outcome. Mr. Barely can have a record for improperly using funds or hosting an improper fundraiser. Myself, I can lose my job for not properly supervising the foundation. Briardale, it may not be supported like it has in the past and lose those programs that have been funded by the foundation. I know the foundation members were consulted and they approved the fundraiser. They also need to be held accountable for their participation. Mr. Barely, maybe he should have waited for a different year. There's a conflict of interest because his buddy and fraternity brother was running the other ones. Was I consulted? If I was, why didn't I make sure this fundraiser was appropriate? I need to visit with the superintendent and law enforcement to see what the next steps are. I need to visit with Mr. Barely to see if he knew that this fundraiser was against the law. And I know he wanted to beat his friend. That was he willing to do anything necessary to raise the most money? As of now, I don't have enough information to make a clear decision. Option 1, take no decision. Just let everything play out by the law enforcement and upper administration. Option 2, press charges on Mr. Barely and shut down the foundation. Option 3, visit with the superintendent, CFO, to develop policies regarding the foundation and how to fundraise. Ask the district to fundraise or fund the supplemental programs. Do a district foundation. Raise money together so it doesn't become a competition. Develop a district policy for fundraising. Admit that I made a mistake and be transparent on how we'll fix this issue. Involve the staff and community on how to handle the foundation. And have one person in charge and elect a fundraising chair each year so this doesn't happen. Option 1, if I take no decision, what are the consequences? The foundation is ran as a previously have with a parent in charge. This situation could happen again. We could lose faith from the community for not handling this situation, and I potentially could lose my job. Option 2, press charges on Mr. Barely and shut down the foundation. Is it fair to Mr. Barely if the fundraiser was an oversight by him? The foundation approved. Is he the only one to blame? Who's going to run the foundation? Me? Another staff member? That's adding to our workload, and the community could be upset with me. There could be pressure to resign for an oversight by me. Option 3. There's many options here. Visit with the superintendent, CFO, to develop policies regarding the foundation and how to fundraise. Have these policies in place so this does not happen again. Everyone's on the same page. The BOE superintendent loses confidence in my ability to lead and set policies. By asking them, do they trust me to make policies or to lead this foundation? I could visit with the BOE to fund the supplemental programs. Use this situation as an example why we need to fund the supplemental programs with district money. It could be a long process, and it could upset some because we've been doing this for a long time. Option 3, other options. Do a district foundation. Raise money together so it doesn't become a competition. By having it a competition, schools and parents are willing to do what it takes to raise the most money. You'll be able to raise more funds and fund each school. Some schools may not get as much as they have, or they could get more. Develop a district policy for fundraising. That way there's no misunderstanding of what each school can and cannot do. We won't have to come up with a grand scheme each year. Admit that you made a mistake and be transparent on how you'll fix those issues. And involve the staff and community on how to handle the foundation. The community will appreciate you admitting that you could have been more involved and you didn't take a more active role in this. By involving more people, come up with a clear policy and procedure on how the foundation should be controlled. Or you could have another option is have one person in charge and elect a fundraising chair each year or so. The person in charge knows the policy, laws, and regulations on all fundraisers. They don't have to come up with the fundraisers. They just have to make sure it's legal or compliant, and there's consistency each year. The best option, I believe that if the district could fund the supplemental programs, they would. So I need to go another route. I would try to develop and advocate a plan for a district foundation. I would meet with the superintendent and CFO and come up with data-informed, equitable fundraising plan and policy. Define what we can and cannot do. I would also look how we run the foundation. I think either one person in charge for a couple years or do a vice president and president. That way you can learn. That way it is a 2-year commitment. The vice president is under the president and learns what they did, and then next year the same thing. You're teaching someone. That way you're not thrown into the fire each year. I would make sure all fundraisers are approved through me. I would also apologize for the bad publicity and say that I'm taking more active role in the foundation. How am I going to implement my decision? I'm going to meet with the superintendent and CFO, come to a decision on either a district foundation or we need to come up with clear policies and a consistent fundraising plan. If it wasn't for the tipster, no one would have known of the legal fundraiser. It could be happening at other schools. So that's why we need clear policies. Once the policies are in place, the superintendent needs to meet with the principals and foundation representatives to go over a plan. It's going to be a collaborative effort. It is important to stress that if these policies cannot be followed, there could be legal ramifications, and we had an example of that. If this plan does not work, I would look at one person in charge of the foundation that understands all the policies, laws, regulations to make sure we comply each year. And then we would elect a fundraising chairman that each year selects the fundraisers and in charge of it. As a future building leader, I will need to make sure that I understand all the policies and regulations that are in place for dealing with all the money and fundraisers. If an issue does arise, you need to take your time to come up with a solution to evaluate, develop a data-informed plan that will benefit the school. This assignment was exactly that. You cannot make a decision on a whim without properly looking at all the options. This class has taught me to be really organized and diligent when it comes to money in the school. You need to have proper checks and balances and not assume assume everything is being done to policy. Thank you and good luck the rest of your classes.